Today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, Fayette County Public Schools approves nearly $2 million in bonuses for right around about 80 administrators. We'll dig into just how much they gave out, how this adds up, and of course, why, if you're a teacher, you should be pretty mad, not at the legislature, but at your school leadership and even at Bashir for continuing this absolute push for ridiculous amounts of spending on the administrative side of things in schooling and not prioritizing teachers' pay. That obviously a conversation about wasting money at the schools would lead into a discussion about school choice and what's going on there. We'll take a quick look at that and look at just why I think that the conservative side of things are acting in the wrong way. They're running a atypical McConnell-type campaign. I'll explain what I mean by that. And then we have the Louisville Metro Police Department. Chief has quit, presumably to stop herself from getting fired. We'll go over that. We'll have all that and more today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. But before I dig down into it, a lot of people have been sending me some messages on Facebook, some emails, and also some comments on YouTube that as they try to share the show, specifically share YouTube links onto social media for people to, tune in, they get an error message from Facebook telling them that they're unable to share it because, well, for some reason, my YouTube channel on Facebook is censored. Don't know why, but for some reason they've decided you're not allowed to do that. One of the error messages actually says that it looks like you're sharing something to try to get likes, comments, and reactions, and that violates our policy, which is weird because they're the ones who provide you the chance to do likes and comments and reactions. Isn't that what they'd want? People to produce content that works for that? You'd think so, but what they're actually doing is using that now as an excuse to go ahead and censor. So if you want to be able to catch the show each and every day, no matter what happens anywhere else, if you say, I want to make sure I'm able to tune into the Andrew Cooperrider Show, make sure you are subscribed and following the show on your favorite podcasting platform. You can head over to theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com. Hit the Listen Now tab. Also, you can reach out to the show there. Hit the Contact tab. Fill out a contact form. You can also email info@theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's info@theandrewshow.com. Without further ado, let's dig down into it. The Fayette County School Board has approved additives for around about 80 or so administrators within the main office there, within the main Board of Education leadership. Not teachers. No. Not people that, we hear the left always crying about needing raises. And I'm not saying they don't need raises. I'm just saying that, I think that's a debate in and of itself. How much more do teachers need to get paid? When you look at the average salary of people in Kentucky, compare that to a teacher, hours where, you start getting into a deeper discussion, but that's not what this is about. What we know for a fact is that we hear liberals, we hear Democrats especially, but even some conservatives, Republicans, maybe not conservatives, talking about how we need to, constantly, it's like a campaign point, we need to pay our teachers more. In fact, we heard it from Bashir repeatedly during this legislative session while they were putting together the budget. He over and over and over again said, we need to give our teachers an 11% raise. But he didn't just say teachers. He actually said all school employees. And there's a reason why he does that, because the leadership class amongst the schools, the superintendents, the deputy superintendents, the chief XYZ, the C-suites, those are all the big political donors too. They're all the ones that are really running, of course, the teachers unions or school unions. It's not typically your average run-of-the-mill math teacher isn't going to be the person who's politically influential. It's going to be some director of XYZ within the schools that is going to be donating or involved in the board. And so those are the people they're really worried about pleasing. They're not actually worried about pleasing the teachers, but they'll go ahead and use the teachers as a distraction, as a scapegoat, as to why you need to give out raises. Because if they're just honest and say, look, I want you to give 11% raise to the people who donate money to my campaign and run the organizations that dump millions of dollars into elections for me, well, they probably wouldn't get those raises. So instead, they want to use the teachers as a issue to demagogue on in order to distract people away from what they're really trying to do and bring in that money. It's the same reason why government will budget to spend money on the roads last, because if they actually end up fixing potholes, well, then their constituents won't be screaming at them to fix something, and they can't turn around now and say, well, we need more money if you want us to fix it. Don't you want good roads? In the same way, they can turn around and say, look, we need more money to pay our teachers more. Don't you want your teachers paid well? And the general population, and a lot of those in government, will sit there and say, yes, we want them paid above average, and let's go ahead and shell out those dollar bills. But that money really ends up in resulting in increased pays for the admins, who they're really prioritized with giving more money to. And this bonus structure really shows that. So the Fayette County School Board approves additives, which is like a bonus, for right around about 80 or so ish of their head office employees, right? $81,000 is the most amount of this solitary additive, this bonus that they're handing out, and that's for the deputy superintendent. $81,000 just in a bonus. I mean, that's a pretty well-paying job. I mean, that bonus is almost double what the average bachelor holding citizen of Kentucky is paid a year. This deputy superintendent's bonus is almost double of that. And then it ranges from $81,000 all the way down to just, simply measly $8,000 for assistant directors. And overall, when you put it all together, it adds up to about $1.976 million. Which, if you were to give that, instead of giving it as raises to your admins, the people in the head office there, if instead the school district had went ahead and just taken that money and shelled it out as bonuses as pay increases to their teachers, well, that's about $600 a year a teacher, or a little bit more than 1%. Remember, Beshear wanted legislators to line item out an 11% raise. But here we can see, and the legislators' argument the entire time was, one, that's unconstitutional. We can't do that, because each district gets to choose how much they want to pay their teachers, how much they want to pay their superintendents, how much they want to pay these C-suite people. They get to decide that. And so if we line item, because our Constitution says that our funding must be equitable from the state into education, and the way we do that is mainly through the SEEK formula, where we pay per student, so larger school districts get more funding, but it's on a per student basis, not from just I guess you get more per student than this other person. In fact, it can be found to be kind of against the law, against our state constitution, for them to go ahead and hand out funding in a non-quote-unquote equitable way such as that. But despite that, we hear them crying about how it needs to happen. And from the left and the right here has been saying, one, it's unconstitutional, but two, we give you more money. It's up for you to choose how you spend it. I mean, this year alone, they increased the SEEK formula another couple $100 a student. So at an average in Fayette County schools, in the classroom there, they upped it about $200 or so a student a year. Well, the average student to teacher ratio there is 13-1. So just in the SEEK formula increase in funding already, you can take the $225 that they increased per student and multiply that by that 13-1 ratio of actual teachers, and you get $3,000 a year. Now, they already provided, so the legislature provided enough funding for around a 5% raise, 6% raise or so. Then you take what they're giving out just to the admins in this school district. That gives you another 1%. So now you're up to 6-7% of the raise covered just with what they're wasting on bonuses for admins, not even if they need the admins. I mean, one of these admins is called the Chief of Diversity, Equity, and Student Belonging, that got a bonus, Chief Unity and Belonging, officer, who got $42,500 a year just in a bonus. you could cut that person's entire position. And you could go ahead and be reaching higher. But even without cutting positions, just saying you're not getting your bonuses because the teachers need to be paid more. And we're going to take the dimes we got extra in funding in the SEEK formula, give that to the teachers. That right there, 6-7%. On top of that, the state has come in, the legislature said, we're going to fund all your transportation costs as well. And before it was right around about 50%. And so now they're chipping in another several $1 million for Fayette County schools. It's right around about $15 to $20 million or so in extra funding beyond their SEEK funding to pay for transportation. So that's now more money into the budget. Well, for every $2 million, that's a 1% raise they could give to the teachers. So if they're kicking in 20-ish million, well, that's a 10% raise right there. So the legislature, just in this last budget, beyond what they were giving them before, has given them enough money for 15 to 16% raise for all the teachers. In addition, if they take the bonuses they're paying out to these head office people, that's 16% or so raise that they could afford to give the teachers, even keeping everything exactly where it was, just taking the additional funding, 15, 16%. But they're not going to do that. Because if they go and give teachers raises, guess what will happen? They can no longer turn and cry to Bashir. They can no longer turn and cry to the constituent. They can no longer turn and cry to the legislators as a school district saying, if we don't get more money, we can't pay our teachers more. Knowing they can't give it to them line items, so they're just going to give it to them in broad chunks and they're going to blow it. And speaking of what they blow it on, and their attempt to blow this is it's consistent. What's funny is if you go to the Kentucky Department of Education website and you look, click around on there, you'll find that they actually have a whole section dedicated to how you can take your ESSR money. Remember, that was the money they were getting from COVID relief. Remember that the federal government was giving our schools to help deal with COVID. You remember that? They have an entire section about how to take that money and use it for bonuses for your staff. That's how dedicated they are to not spending money on what it's supposed to be spent for. And that's how dedicated they are to giving money to that leadership class that sits in the head office. But without all that money, like we're spending here on the diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, well, how can we have great things like the DEI board, subcommittee board, right? The diversity board is now demanding that a current school board member, Amanda Ferguson, be forced out of the diversity council. I'm not kidding you. So the backstory here, for a long time, the KEA, Kentucky Education Association, was the organizer, was the grassroots, was the political arm of the schools, was the teachers union. They didn't call themselves technically a union, but basically functioned as the teachers union. Well, then came along the grassroots group called 120 Strong. And 120 Strong largely put together a lot of the protest and things surrounding the teachers' pension reforms that were going on under Bevin. And so they really got out there pushing on those issues. But KEA, they felt, the leaders of 120 Strong felt that. And one of these people is, of course, Anima Brewer, which is important to this story. But they felt that they were not getting a proper seat at the table because they're the grassroots efforts, but KEA, the Kentucky Education Association, was just pushing them to the side. So they said, well, we're going to take 120 Strong and we're going to go associate with AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, which is a national teachers union, the second largest. And we're going to create 120 AFT here in Kentucky to be a competitor to the Kentucky Education Association. And so there's been a lot of fighting between the two about, is it KEA or 120 AFT? They're fighting over, who's going to be their constituents, who's a part of their members, why you should join AFT versus KEA, and so on and so forth. So that argument's been brewing underneath the surface. It's important to notate that. So what happened here was Amanda Ferguson was commenting on Nima Brewer's post she made about an individual, and Amanda Ferguson on a random person's comment, and that comment said, quoting from the comment, who's the lesbian on the left? Which was in reference to some KEA people. And Ferguson posted a GIF of a Furby laughing, I guess, underneath that comment. She then later went in and deleted that and moved it to underneath a different comment by another person in order to the laughy emoji comment. And her defense about leaving it underneath the who's the lesbian on the left post was that she didn't mean to do that, that it was really meant for someone else. Well, now the Diversity and Equity Board is demanding that Amanda Ferguson be removed from their committee. Now, this is that fantastic. I mean, over a Furby comment, they want her removed because it was too insensitive. Because I guess because it was talking about lesbians and she was laughing at it with a Furby, and that was too much for them to handle. And so they demand she be removed. But what she is saying is that, look, that was posted incorrectly, and it's becoming quite a to-do. But this is the same group, for those of you who don't remember, that another board member that said that they didn't want anybody monkeying around with the budget. This happened last year. This gentleman came in, this school board member, Tom Jones. He was in a budgetary meeting and he said, look, I don't want anybody monkeying around with the budget. Well, the Diversity Council said that that was a microaggression and demanded that Tom and all the other board members attend a DEI training. And then eventually Tom just quit. He said, you know what, I'm tired of all the controversy over me saying a phrase that is real common, not racially charged at all, has no racial animus, has no background in racism. But because you think it's a microaggression, because I said I don't want anybody monkeying around with the budget, and you're demanding all these things, I'm just going to quit. That's the important thing that this council does. They just harass the school board members into forcing them to view things their way. And groups like this, the Diversity and Equity Council, gets to waste more of our taxpayer funds, both state and local, in order to pay for harassing school board members that really are doing minute things that shouldn't really matter. But of course, it's their way of making sure that, well, we're the real dictators here. We will use philosophy to beat you. It's like a preacher that's using the position of being the preacher of the religion to control the king. To be like, you know, you board members can do whatever, but all I'm saying is that I'm going to tell the people who come and listen to our sermons every Sunday that you're an awful person. If you don't listen to me, you won't have my support. It's the exact same thing. That's exactly what they're doing. Speaking of schools and school choice, though, the school choice fight is obviously on here in Kentucky. And by on, I mean, really, it seems like mainly one side is fighting. I am starting to see some digital ads coming from places like Americans for Prosperity and other places online when we take a look. But I'm really not seeing a whole lot of fight out of the pro-Amendment 2 side of things. And this really has to do with the way the modern Democrat runs a campaign compared to the modern Republican, and I'm putting modern in quotations there, because a modern Democrat understands they need their grassroots work, the small dollar donors, organizing the base, embracing their grassroots. They really do. And that's why they're really good too at these issue-based votes. Even in states where you see vast approval for what the amendments that people are trying to get passed in various states would agree with, you'll still see Democrats winning on these issues because they're better at organizing. And of course, they have no problem just lying about what the actual amendment is about. We saw this in 2022, where they lied about what Amendment 2 was. That time was to pass an amendment to make sure that it is lined out that you do not have a right to an abortion within our state constitution. And nowhere in our state constitution does it mention abortion. And if you're just like an honest person, you could even be pro-baby murder. You could be pro-abortion up until birth and still agree that, yeah, there's actually no right to an abortion, codified within our state constitution. And so you could vote yes on Amendment 2 2 years ago without being pro-life because it's just factual. But they turned it instead to an argument about whether you're pro-choice or pro-life. And, they did a good job of having the argument they want to have because they shaped the argument coming into it. And what we're facing here is another situation where the actual argument that we are supposed to be having is over whether or not they want any decision to be made, whether or not constituents want anybody to consider within our legislature any kind of school choice type systems. It doesn't just have to be a voucher system. It could be a, simple as a charter school system where they have rules that they've negotiated with the local school board or mayor, whoever chartered the school, the government entity, and they agree upon these rules that they have to maintain. They run the school. They have to offer a lottery system. People have to have an equal opportunity to go to the school. Like, they could offer that kind of system. They could offer something like educational saving accounts. What we saw with 563 from, I believe, 2021, which allowed nonprofits to be formed that would take in donations from people that then would hand those donations out in the form of scholarships to means-tested children in order for them to be able to attend a private school on a scholarship if their parents can afford it. And that was a law passed by our legislature just to simply provide a tax incentive for people to donate to those types of nonprofits. And even that was voted down by our Supreme Court, said, no, you can't pass that because it's unconstitutional because it goes against your state constitution. So you don't even have to be for vouchers. If you're at all for even people being able to take their own money and donate it for people to go to private schools, you can be for Amendment 2, the school choice amendment that's coming up. But that's not the way the argument is shaping up. Instead, the left is grabbing a hold of it, as they often do, and they're shaping the argument themselves a whole lot better, and they're shaping it to be about whether or not you're for private voucher type systems, whether or not you're for people who already are going to private schools for your... They're shaping it to where the argument is basically that all these rich people going to private schools right now, well, you're going to... by voting yes on this, they're going to just give them tax breaks and take money out of the taxpayer's pocket to pay for all these people to go to their rich private schools. You're not going to have more opportunity. And that is the argument they want to have. Because if we have the real argument about charter schools, about money following kids, about how it opens up opportunities for even those economically disadvantaged, we can offer things like scholarships for means-tested children, meaning that they qualify for government assistance and other things their families do. And so we're going to provide them a scholarship to be able to go to a private school. All those things. They don't want you to talk about it because that offers opportunity to those who are less fortunate. Instead, they want to have an argument about how this is only going to benefit those who are already affording private schools, and it's only going to cost our public schools money to give them to the rich people. That's the argument they want to have. And they're getting to have it. Because one, they're out there, they're knocking the doors, they're shaping the grassroots. Two, they have the media on their side, of course. And three, they have large apparatuses already in place, put in place by their schools. They have, of course, their teachers, they've got their administrators, they've got their unions. They already have this ready-built infrastructure in place. So with all that in mind, you would say, okay, this is going to be a fight in order to get this passed. We're going to have to overcome it. And in order to overcome this, we got to get organized. But yet the pro vote yes on 2 side I'm not seeing them doing much right now. And in large part, it's because efforts are being led by typical consultants that come from the McConnell line of thinking. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, McConnell, during his time early on, kind of mastered this way of campaigning, where you basically do nothing until you're 30 days out, and then you dump all this money financially dominating the other guy, knocking as many doors as you can, running ads, doing all these other things. And the problem is that arguments are now being shaped sooner. People are paying attention to politics earlier. People are wanting to get active and involved in these things earlier. And so if you do the McConnell line of thinking where you wait till a month out, we're going to go ahead and just push real hard, you're going to lose. But yet that seems to be the path that they're on. And it's weird because we've seen this McConnell type of campaigning in recent time, pretty much over the last 4 years or so, 5 years or so, in Kentucky, lose almost every single time. That McConnell line of campaigning, we're just going to spend a bunch of money and try to campaign a whole lot a month out because that's when we think people actually start paying attention, has never won a hard election over the last 4 years. Cameron lost. Incumbents in the legislature running campaigns that way, losing, being taken out by individuals who have less funds but are out there working harder for longer because they're not thinking of campaigning in the same way of, well, we'll just push real hard a month out. And so the question will be, will they get their act together? Will the let's pass school choice side of things figure out that they can't McConnell this? They got to get shoe leather on the ground. They got to start heavily advertising. They got to start counter messaging because I am inundated with anti-second vote no on two, anti-Second Amendment, I was going to say, but not Second Amendment to the federal Constitution, but anti, school choice advertising and grassroots efforts and story. I'm just inundated with them. And I'm hardly ever seeing anything that's pro-school choice that isn't just from my normal run-of-the-mill people that I know on social media that I already interact with. And so you got to think, if that's what I'm seeing, a person who's paying attention, heavy attention, imagine what those that aren't as much paying attention are seeing. They're seeing a lot of things about why this is a bad idea. And if they're making up their mind before we ever get a chance to talk to them, well, it's not going to be very good for the success of this amendment. Louisville Metro Police Department Chief Jacqueline has decided to go ahead and step down. Go ahead and step down. Said, you know what? Not in the mood anymore to deal with this. I'm going to step down. Probably because she's trying not to get fired. To remind you, this is now, the third chief in 3 years or so, right? I mean, to remind you, she's had, just over the past 3 weeks, arrests of high-profile individuals who are here bringing commerce into the city, Scotty Scheffler, that should have never have happened. She's had 3 sexual harassment lawsuits filed. She's had tons of issues of people not turning on their body cameras or not wearing them even just over the past few weeks. She's had an issue personally of not wearing and turning on body cameras. These issues go on and on and on. And she's got to keep her job. And you got to ask, I did an episode last week called Why Isn't She Fired Yet? Because we asked, why isn't she fired yet? Why is she still here? Well, it turns out the mayor must have talked to her and said, look, I'm going to have to fire you regardless. You're going to have to quit because I can't keep you on. And so to save herself the embarrassment, she goes ahead and decides to resign. And now the position's open again. And who's going to want to do the job? Who wants to be the police chief in Louisville? Where the public hates you, where everything's broken. You know what? You get the police you deserve. You elect the people you elect. You hire the people you hire. The leftists in the city throwing a fit about everything to do with policing. And what are they going to get? They're going to unsafe communities and nobody wants a job. That's how it's going to turn out. Well, I was going to go over a lawsuit going on in Louisville, too, about a former city councilwoman. Running out of time, though. So we'll be covering that tomorrow. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here. Have a great rest of your day.